The last video I put out was all about the king tut of RRSP mistakes, the one that could lead to you losing half to CRA. But don't worry, that's not the only mistake you can make. There's plenty, and people make them all the time. My name is Reese. I'm the founder of Well Built Wealth, and today I'm going to walk you through some of the most common RRSP mistakes that we see people making and how you can avoid them. Your mission, should you choose to accept it, is to tally the total number of these mistakes that you're currently making or have made in the past and drop your number below in the comments. And no lying. Mistake number 1, being too conservative. An RRSP is a registered retirement savings plan. So right in the title, we can see that this account is meant for the long haul, retirement. So you want this bad boy to grow. You want your money to go and make money for you. But if you take the money that is in your RRSP and stick it in things like GICs or savings accounts, then never mind growing, you'll be lucky if you even keep up with inflation. Now, I understand why people do this. I get the psychology behind it. People want to be safe with their money. They want to avoid risk, and that is totally fair. But if your money isn't growing as fast as inflation is, then you're actually losing your purchasing power over time. And that is a permanent loss. So you simply cannot grow that way. Now, I'm not saying that there isn't a time and a place for GICs or savings accounts or things like that. There is. But to put a massive amount of the money that is meant to help fund your retirement, which can span decades, into things that we know have a long-term track record of treading water at best, is a recipe for falling behind inflation and losing many years of potential retirement income. Now, please don't misunderstand me. I am not saying put your RRSP all on black. Not at all. Of course not. Be wise and be thoughtful and know what your options are and what you can handle. And if you need a little help there, I have a few super easy to understand videos on how investing works and how to make sense of it all. But regardless, what I am saying is that being too conservative with your retirement accounts can actually lead to way more harm than most people realize. Mistake number 2, taking money out of your RRSP early. This one really hurts to watch. Way too many people treat their RRSPs like it's an ATM. They pull money out to go on a vacation, buy a car, renovate the kitchen, stuff that has nothing to do with retirement. And while you're definitely allowed to do this, the tax consequences can be savage. You see, RRSP withdrawals are fully taxable, just like income, in the year you take them out. And what makes this so nasty is that they are thrown on top of all your other taxable income that year and are taxed at whatever your top tax rates are. And in many provinces, those top tax rates can get north of 50%. So yeah, pulling out 20 grand to end up with 10 is a serious bummer, no matter how you slice it. And it's not just the tax hit. You're also killing the long-term growth and compounding that would have happened had you just left it alone. Of course, if it's a true emergency, then you do what you got to do. But if you're pulling out money to go to Mexico, buy a hot tub, get a nose job, or whatever, you're basically kicking your retirement in the shins. You can do it, but hurts like a son of a gun. Mistake number 3, blowing your RRSP tax refund. Oh, this one is so tempting, because it feels like it's free money. But of course, it isn't. It's simply the government giving you back some of the tax you already paid. In fact, these tax deductions are pretty much the main reason people use RRSPs in the first place. Anyway, the bottom line is this. If you take these refunds and spend them on shenanigans, no matter how shiny, you are throwing away a really easy opportunity to supercharge your wealth. So what's the smart move? Well, there's at least a few. You could throw it right back into your RRSP and get another tax deduction all over again with the exact same money. Kind of feels like cheating, but it ain't. You could top up your tax-free savings account, always a crowd favorite, or you could use it to pay down debt, a classic move. Any of those will do beautifully and throw you way ahead of the curve if you actually commit to doing them. But that is a big fat if. Mistake number 4, not using a spousal RRSP. Now, obviously, this doesn't apply to everybody, but if you're married or common law, this can be an amazing way to lower your household tax bill in retirement, and tons of people miss it. Here's the basics. Let's say one spouse earns a lot more income than the other spouse, and let's just say that spouse is you. Rather than contributing everything into your RRSP, you contribute a bunch into what is called a spousal RRSP as well. With the spousal RRSP, you'll still get the tax deduction to go against your big income, but now the money goes into an account in your spouse's name. So now you both have an RRSP account. Now the reason this is smart is because all RRSP and RIF withdrawals are taxable. And if all the withdrawals were being taxed in your name only, it would push your income up into higher and nastier tax brackets. But if you can pull out money in both of your names, then it keeps both of your incomes lower, and therefore keeps you both in lower tax rates, which in plain English simply means that your household will pay less tax. Now it's true, once you're over age 65, you can split your RIF income anyway. So it's not a game changer then, but it can save a boatload of tax for those retiring before age 65. And even if you or your spouse don't plan on retiring before age 65, it is wise to set yourself up properly just in case it ends up happening. Mistake number 5, over-contributing. You cannot just throw as much money as you want into your RRSP. There are limits. Now, I'm not going to get into how all of that is calculated in this particular video, but I will say that you can find your limit simply by looking at your notice of assessment that you get from CRA every year. To be sure, many people don't even come close to going over their RRSP limit, but it can happen, it does happen, and it can happen pretty easily, especially in cases where people have pensions that eat up a lot of their RRSP room, or if you make a large contribution in a year to try to offset some big tax bill or something like that. Anyway, what you need to know is that if you do go over your limit, CRA will hit you with a 1% per month penalty on the excess that you put in. And needless to say, 1% per month can add up quick. Now that said, there is a small cushion. You are allowed to over-contribute by up to $2,000 without a penalty. But that's it. Go over that, and CRA starts charging you every month until you fix it. Mistake number 6, beneficiary boo-boos. Many people have no idea what happens to their RRSP when they die. Fact is, for most, unless they have a spouse named as their beneficiary, the full value of their RRSP is taxed in the year that they die. Which means if you're single, divorced, or widowed, you could, without proper planning, lose a massive amount of your RRSP to tax all at once. Now, this is the subject of my last video, so I'm not going to get too deep into it here, but if you haven't seen it, you probably should. But the moral of the story is that if you do have a spouse, naming them as the beneficiary of your RRSP means that when you pass away, the full value of your RRSP will roll over into their RRSP without a tax hit. And that is ideal. What isn't ideal is forgetting to name a beneficiary at all. We usually see this mistake on people's RRSPs that they have through work. And that's because these plans are often set up without any help and they basically never get reviewed, and so details like this are really easy to miss. Another common faux pas we see is forgetting to change your beneficiary when your relationships change. I have no idea how much money is accidentally left to exes, but based on the amount that we catch this mistake, it's got to be a decent amount. Lastly, we see a lot of people naming their adult children as the beneficiaries of their RRSPs. This isn't always a mistake, but sometimes it can be. Here's what you need to know. If you do name them as the beneficiaries, the full amount of the RRSP is still taxable, but it's your estate that owes the tax. So if you're going to do this, try to make sure that you have other resources available in your estate to cover the tax bill, like a TFSA or a house or whatever. Otherwise, this could cause serious trouble for your children down the road. CRA will come to them if they can't find what they are owed in your estate. And if your children have already committed the funds elsewhere or just simply spent it, well, no bueno. On the other hand, if you know that you won't have sufficient resources in your estate to cover the tax bill, then you may want to consider naming your estate as the beneficiary instead of your children. This way, all the tax issues get settled first, and then whatever is remaining flows out to whoever you name in your will without any of the tax drama. Now, yes, the will have to go through probate, and there is a small fee for that, but sometimes the small cost to making sure that everything is done properly and you avoid some serious potential problems is worth it. Mistake number 7, waiting too long to withdraw. This may seem counterintuitive, and it definitely flies in the face of the old rule of thumb in the financial services industry that says you should leave your RSP alone for as long as possible until you're forced to turn it into a RIF at age 71. And you can see why people thought that. All of the money that's inside your RSP grows tax-free until you pull it out. So the longer you leave it, the more that it can compound and grow. However, with the advent of sophisticated financial planning software that takes into account your whole situation, including your future tax situation, it has become extremely clear that the industry was, well, wrong. The rule of thumb is now flipped. For most people, even though starting withdrawals will lead to paying a bit more tax in the short run, can lead to serious tax savings over the long run. And the main reason for this is tax rates. If you leave your RRSP to balloon in size, the amount you will be forced to pull out in the future will be much higher, which can push you up into the more aggressive tax rates. And so you can mitigate this by pulling money out earlier, bit by bit, at lower tax rates. Again, I have a detailed video that goes into all the nuts and bolts of how this works, so I won't beat it with the stick here. But if you haven't seen it, highly recommend. And the last mistake we're covering today is number 8, not reviewing your RRSP. I honestly have no idea how many times we run into people who opened an RSP account 10, 20, 30 years ago and haven't reviewed it since. They just let it do its thing. But things change. Your income, your goals, your tolerance for volatility, the tax rules, and here's a particularly sweet one, fees. They change. And they've been dropping big time over the last few years. Moral of the story, if you have mistakes in your RRSP, you want to catch them early. Because the longer they fester, the more they're going to cost you.